The valley was silent, too silent. No birds, no wind, no voices, nothing. The kind of silence that made the heart beat louder in the chest. Legends said that once you entered this place, you never came back. People called it the Silent Valley, and they spoke of it only in whispers. High mountains surrounded the valley like walls, their black shadows stretching across the land. The ground was broken and dry, covered with strange claw marks and stains that looked like old blood. Every rock, every shadow, felt like it was watching, waiting, breathing. And somewhere deep inside that cursed place, two small voices cried for help. The alien mother stood at the edge, her body shaking with fear. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes full of tears that would not stop falling. She could still hear her twins calling her name before the monsters dragged them away. Her heart screamed to run inside and save them, but she knew she could not survive. The monsters were too many, too strong, too cruel. She had begged everyone in the village, every warrior, every hunter, but no one dared. They all lowered their eyes and said the same words. It is death. No. One can face 300 monsters. But then, a human stepped forward. He was not from her world, not from her people. He looked different, tall, broad shoulders, with eyes that carried both fire and sadness. He had scars on his arms that told of old battles, scars that spoke louder than words. When the mother begged him, he did not look away. He did not refuse. Instead, he said something no one else had the courage to say. I will go. The crowd gasped. Some even laughed nervously, thinking it was madness. A single man against 300 creatures. Impossible. But the human's face was calm, his jaw firm, his eyes steady. He did not ask about reward. He did not ask about safety. He only asked, where did they take the children? The mother pointed, her trembling hand showing the dark entrance between two jagged cliffs. That way, inside the valley. She whispered, her voice breaking. They are deep inside. I can still feel them. I can still hear them. Her words choked, her knees weak. She fell to the ground, begging, please, save them. Please, bring them back. The human knelt down, his strong hand resting gently on her shoulder. His voice was low but certain. I will not fail them. And with those words, he stood and began walking into the silent valley. The air grew colder with every step he took. The silence pressed against his ears until even his own breathing sounded too loud. He gripped his weapon tighter, eyes scanning every shadow, every movement of stone and dust. He knew they were watching him. He knew he was being hunted already. Behind him, the alien mother watched, her heart torn between hope and fear. She wanted to scream, to call him back, but her voice froze in her throat. Her twins' faces flashed in her mind, their laughter, their small hands holding hers, their cries when they were taken. Her chest ached with both pain and desperate hope. She whispered into the wind, please, human, please save them. Inside the valley, the human's footsteps echoed on the cracked ground. He could smell the sharp scent of blood and decay. Bones lay scattered across the path, some small, some far too large. The monsters had made this place their home, their nest, their killing ground, and now he had entered it, one man against hundreds. The first growl came from the shadows, low and deep. His eyes turned, catching the gleam of yellow light. Another growl answered, then another, until the valley trembled with the sound. From behind the rocks and cliffs, glowing eyes appeared one by one. Dozens of them, circling, waiting, hungry. The human did not flinch. His breath was steady, his weapon ready, his body like stone. He knew the fight would not be easy. He knew the chance of survival was small, but he also knew something greater. Would never let innocent children die alone. If he was to fall, he would fall fighting. And if he was to live, he would live with honor. The silence was broken, not by voices, not by wind, but by the roar of the first monster as it leaped from the darkness, claws wide, teeth sharp. The battle for the twins had begun. The human had stepped into the valley, his shadow swallowed by the dark cliffs. The air outside grew colder, as if the land itself feared what lived within. Behind him, the alien mother fell to her knees, her heart breaking with every step he took. Her people gathered near the edge, whispering to one another, calling him a fool, calling him already dead. But her eyes were locked only on him, the stranger who dared where no one else would. Her hands shook as she clutched the ground, the dirt staining her pale fingers. Tears burned her eyes, not only because of fear but also because of something she could not understand. Why would a human, a man from another world, risk his life for her children? Her own kind had turned their backs on her. Their warriors refused. Their leaders called it hopeless. But he, a foreigner, had said only one thing: I will go. The whispers around her grew louder. Foolish, said one villager, shaking his head. 300 monsters. He will not last a moment. Another muttered. Some even laughed, the cruel laughter of those who were too afraid to fight, but bold enough to mock. The mother closed her eyes, shutting out their voices, shutting out their weakness. In her heart, she prayed. Though she did not know to whom, she prayed for the stranger, for his strength, for his survival, and most of all, for the lives of her children. Her twins were all she had left. Their father had died seasons ago, in another battle, torn apart by the same kind of monsters. Since then, she had raised them alone. Their laughter, her only light. Their smiles, her only hope. And now they were trapped in the valley of death, crying, waiting, and maybe believing their mother had abandoned them. The thought pierced her heart like a knife. She stood, her legs trembling, and looked once more into the dark entrance. Her voice cracked as she whispered, Come back to me. Please come back with them. Her body swayed as if she might collapse, but she forced herself to remain standing. If the human was to fight for her children, she would not dishonor him by giving in to despair. Meanwhile, inside the valley, the human was already surrounded. The first wave of monsters had rushed him. Claws flashing, teeth snapping, he moved like water, dodging, striking, his weapon cutting through their bodies with brutal precision. Every swing, every strike, came with the strength of a man who carried not his own life, but the lives of children in his hands. Blood splashed the rocks. The ground shook with the roars of the beasts, but he stood firm. Though the monsters fell, more and more eyes glowed in the dark, watching, waiting to strike. Outside, the mother pressed a hand to her mouth, her sharp ears picking up faint echoes of roars and clashes. From within, each sound made her heart jump, wondering if it was his death cry or a monster's. She did not know this man, did not even know his name, but with every sound of the battle, she felt bound to him, for he was the only one in the universe fighting for what she loved most. In that moment, he was not a stranger. He was her last hope, her last prayer, given flesh. The villagers began to leave one by one, shaking their heads. They did not want to see the moment when silence would return, when the proof of his death would reach them. But the mother stayed, her knees sinking back into the dirt, her body trembling as her lips moved in broken whispers. Hold on, please hold on. Time felt endless, every heartbeat stretching into eternity. Her tears made the ground wet beneath her, her throat burned from prayers and pleas. And then she remembered the last time she had seen her twins. They had been playing by the river, their laughter echoing through the trees. Her daughter had picked flowers and placed them in her brother's hair, both of them giggling. She had thought life was safe then, thought nothing could break the small happiness they had. But happiness was fragile, and monsters cared nothing for it. The sound of a deep roar broke her memory, pulling her back to the present. The valley shook, a cloud of dust rising from within. The villagers who had not yet left gasped, some backing away, as if the darkness itself might spill out. The mother did not move, her hands clawed at the ground, her eyes wide and wet. Her whole soul screamed for one thing: to see her children again. Inside, the human was bleeding, his chest cut, his arms bruised, but he still fought. Every time his strength threatened to fail, he thought of the two small faces waiting in fear. He thought of the mother's tears, the way she begged with her, whole heart, and he kept moving, his will burning hotter than any wound. He had fought wars before, he had seen comrades die, but never had he felt a purpose as sharp as this. He was not fighting for himself, not even for honor. He was fighting for a mother's plea, for the lives of children who deserved to laugh again. The monsters closed in again, their growls shaking the ground. The battle had only just begun, and the mother, outside the valley, whispered through her tears, "Human, don't stop, please, don't stop." The growl grew louder until it became a roar, echoing across the cliffs. Dust shook from the stones. Small pebbles rolled down the jagged walls. The human tightened his grip on his blade, his body still, his breath slow. He knew the monsters were no longer waiting, they were attacking. From the shadows leapt the first beast. Its body was huge, covered in thick scales that glistened like dark armor. Its eyes glowed yellow. Its mouth opened wide to show rows of jagged teeth, claws longer. Then knives slashed through the air toward him. The ground cracked under its weight. Its roar filled the valley with terror. The human did not flinch. He stepped forward, faster than the creature expected. His blade cut upward, clean and sharp. Blood sprayed the ground as the beast screamed and collapsed. For a moment, the valley fell silent. Only the sound of dripping blood breaking it. But silence never lasted here. From the rocks above, two more monsters lunged, one from the left and one from the right. The human spun, his blade catching the first across the chest. He ducked under. The second, his fist slamming into its jaw with bone-breaking force. The impact shook his arm, but the creature stumbled, shrieking in rage. They were testing him, circling him, learning his strength. He could feel dozens of glowing eyes watching, hidden in the shadows. Each step he took, claws scraped stone, tails whipped the ground. The valley itself felt alive with hunger, with bloodlust. The human steadied his stance. His chest rose and fell, sweat already sliding down his temple. He whispered to himself, a promise he would not break. "I will not fail the children." The second beast came again, faster, its tail swinging like a whip. The human leaped aside, rolling across the dust. His blade flashed as he rose, cutting the creature's leg. It roared in fury, blood spraying as it staggered. But before he could strike again, another growl shook the valley. Out from the shadows crawled a massive form, larger than the rest. Its back was covered with bone spikes, its head heavy and horned. This was no scout, no test, it was a leader. The other monsters hissed and stepped back, giving it space. Their glowing eyes burned brighter, as if cheering their champion. The human lifted his blade, his body aching but steady. The leader monster lowered its head, claws digging into the earth. Then it charged. A storm of muscle and rage. The ground split beneath its weight. Stones shattered. The air itself seemed to shake as it came. The human waited, his eyes fixed. His muscles coiled like a spring. At the last second, he sidestepped, his blade slicing across the beast's side. The cut was deep, but not enough to stop it. It roared and spun, its tail smashing against his chest. Pain shot through him as he crashed against a rock, the breath torn from his lungs. For a moment, his vision blurred, his ears rang, but then he remembered the sound of the children crying. He forced himself up, spitting blood, his grip tightening again. The monster charged once more, faster this time, its rage blinding it. The human dove forward, rolling under its claws. As he rose, his blade drove deep into its throat. The creature's roar turned into a choking scream as it thrashed. Blood poured, staining the dust black, until finally it collapsed with a heavy crash. The valley went still again, but the silence was different now. Dozens of glowing eyes still surrounded him, but they no longer looked only hungry, they looked cautious, watching. The human pulled his blade free, his chest heaving, blood dripped from his cuts. His muscles burned, but his eyes burned brighter than theirs. He stood tall, refusing to bow to fear, outside the valley. The alien mother pressed a hand to her chest, She had heard the roars, the crashes, the silence. She did not know what had happened, but her heart refused to give up. She whispered, "He's still fighting. He's still alive." The villagers shook their heads, whispering again that it was madness. But the mother's eyes shone with fragile hope, for she knew, somehow, that the human was different. Inside, the human dragged his blade across the ground, letting the blood fall away. His body hurt, but his spirit only grew stronger. He had faced the first wave and survived, but deep inside, he knew the real battle had not yet begun. The shadows shifted, growls echoed once more. More monsters stepped forward, claws ready, eyes burning. The human raised his blade, his voice low but steady. "First blood is mine," he whispered, and then he charged into the darkness again. The valley trembled as the monsters stirred. The human stood in the center, his chest rising and falling, his blade dripping with dark blood. The body of the horned leader lay still on the ground, its lifeless eyes staring into nothing, but the silence that followed was not victory. It was only the warning of what would come next. From the cliffs above, glowing eyes multiplied. From the cracks in the rocks, long claws scraped the stone. Shadows moved like rivers, sliding closer and closer. Dozens of roars rose at once, blending into one terrible sound. The swarm was coming. The human braced himself, tightening the grip on his weapon. His breath slowed, his heartbeat steady. Pain burned in his ribs where the tail had struck him. His arm throbbed with bruises, but his spirit refused to weaken. He whispered to himself, "The children are waiting." The first wave came with thunder. 10, 20, 30 monsters rushed from the shadows, their claws tearing into the ground, their teeth snapping, their eyes blazing. The human ran forward to meet them, his battle cry tearing through the valley. His blade cut the first across the chest, black blood spraying in the air. He spun, striking another down, his body moving faster than thought. But the swarm did not stop. It only grew. Two beasts leaped at him from opposite sides, their claws ready to shred him apart. The human dropped low, rolling beneath them, his blade slicing upward as he rose. Both creatures fell, their roars cut short. But another slammed into him from behind, throwing him to the dirt. Claws raked across his back. Hot pain seared through him. He roared in anger and rolled, stabbing the beast in the throat, pushing it off with his boot. Dust and blood filled the air. The monsters circled him, waiting for an opening. The human's body dripped with sweat and blood, his chest heaving, but his eyes were sharp, his movements still quick. Every strike of his blade was filled with purpose. Every swing carried the weight of his vow. Outside the valley, the alien mother could hear the endless roars. She pressed her hands together, praying without words, her tears staining the ground. The villagers had fled back to the safety of their homes, leaving her alone at the edge. Still, she stayed, her heart refusing to leave the one man who had chosen to fight for her children. She whispered again and again, "Hold on, human, please, hold on." Inside, the swarm grew wilder. They attacked not one at a time, but in packs, 5 or 6 rushing together. The human fought like a storm, his blade flashing, his body twisting and striking. But every kill came with a price. New cuts opened on his arms. His leg burned with pain. His armor was torn, his skin bleeding, yet his spirit blazed brighter with every wound. One massive beast lunged, its mouth wide, fangs glistening. The human thrust his blade straight into its jaw, splitting it apart. Another slammed into him, knocking him down. Claws tearing across his chest, he gritted his teeth, forcing himself up, his blade cutting through its neck in one swift motion. Blood rained across the stones, the ground dark with it. The swarm hesitated, their eyes flickering with something like fear. They had lost dozens already. Their dead littered the ground, but hunger and rage drove them forward still. They could smell his blood, hear his breath, see his wounds. They believed he would fall soon. The human planted his feet firmly on the bloody ground. His shoulders heaved, his breath ragged. Still, He lifted his blade again, raising his voice in defiance. "Come then," he shouted, his voice echoing through the cliffs. "You will not have the children." The monsters roared as one and rushed him again. The valley became chaos, the clash of claws and steel, the spray of blood, the thunder of roars. The human cut, struck, dodged, rolled, his body a blur of motion. Each second felt like an hour, each step closer to death, but he did not falter. He did not retreat. Above the cliffs, more shadows moved, more eyes glowed. The swarm was endless. But the human's will was endless too. Even when his legs trembled, even when his hands shook, he fought on. Every strike was a promise, every breath a vow. Far away, deep inside the valley, the twins huddled in a dark cave. They clung to each other, their small bodies trembling, their eyes wide with fear. But when the sound of the battle reached them, the roars of monsters and the cries of a fighter, they felt something. Hope. For the first time since they had been taken, they believed someone was coming for them. Back at the battlefield, the human stood surrounded by bodies. Blood ran across the stones, his blade heavy in his hand, but still the swarm moved. Still the valley growled with hunger. He lifted his blade once more, his body broken, but his spirit unbroken. The endless swarm was not yet finished, and neither was he. The ground was painted in blood, dark pools spreading across the broken stones. Dozens of monster bodies lay scattered, their twisted forms silent at last. The human stood among them, his breath heavy, his chest rising and falling like a drum. Sweat and blood mixed on his face, his hands trembling, but his eyes still burned with fire. The swarm had not broken him, not yet. Though his body screamed with pain, his spirit would not bend. He wiped his blade on the dirt and turned his gaze deeper into the valley. Somewhere beyond the cliffs, past the shadows and death, the children waited. Their cries echoed faintly through the wind, weak but still alive. That sound was all he needed to keep moving. Each step felt heavier now, his wounds pulling at his strength. The valley seemed endless, filled with dark caves and twisting paths. Shadows crawled along the walls like living things. The silence between roars felt sharper than the battles themselves. He knew more beasts were waiting, watching, planning their next strike. But he could not stop. He would not stop. The alien mother, still at the edge of the valley, pressed her hands against the rocks, her knees cut and bleeding from kneeling too long. Her lips moved in whispers, her voice hoarse. She could no longer hear the clash of battle, only the endless silence. She prayed the silence meant he was still moving, not that he had fallen. Her heart reached for him, and for her children. Every second felt like an eternity. Inside, the human passed through a narrow canyon, the walls closing tightly around him. The path twisted, dark and damp, the stench of blood thick in the air. Bones scattered at his feet, some small enough to be children's. His jaw clenched, his grip on the blade hardening, his pace quickened, his heart pounding with urgency. Then he heard it, a faint sound, a whimper, a small voice calling through the dark. He froze, his breath caught. It was the sound of a child, weak and trembling, but alive. He followed, his steps faster now, ignoring the pain tearing through his body. The sound led him to a cave hidden beneath jagged rocks. The entrance was narrow, guarded by two beasts larger than any he had faced so far. They crouched low, their bodies covered in thick scales, their teeth glistening in the faint light. Their eyes glowed brighter than the others. Cruel and sharp, they were guardians, protectors of the nest. The human tightened his grip and stepped forward, his voice low. His words meant not for them, but for himself. "I will not let you keep them," the monsters roared, their claws digging into the ground as they charged. The human moved, his blade cutting across the first as it lunged. The strike tore through its neck, black blood spraying across the stones. But the second beast slammed into him, throwing him against a rock wall. Pain exploded through his shoulder, his blade nearly slipping from his hand. He forced himself up, teeth gritted, chest burning with each breath. The beast lunged again, claws ready to tear him apart. He stepped forward instead of back, driving his blade deep into its chest. The creature roared, thrashing wildly, but he held firm, pushing until the blade pierced its heart. The beast shuddered, then collapsed with a heavy crash. The human stood over the bodies, his breath ragged, his strength fading, but beyond the entrance, he heard it again, small cries, trembling voices. He staggered forward, pushing through the narrow passage into the cave. Inside, the darkness wrapped around him, but he could see them, huddled in the corner, two small figures, the twins, their pale blue skin glowing faintly in the dim light, their large eyes wide with fear and tears. They clung to each other, shaking, their voices breaking as they cried. The human's chest tightened, his heart heavy with both sorrow and relief. He sheathed his blade and moved slowly, his voice low and gentle. "It's all right. I'm here." The twins froze, their eyes fixed on him. For a moment, they looked unsure, frightened of this strange man covered in blood and wounds. But then the girl whispered, "Mother," her voice trembling. The human knelt down, shaking, his head softly. "Your mother sent me," he said, his voice steady. "She's waiting. I'll take you to her." The boy stepped forward first, his small hands trembling as he reached for the human's arm. The girl followed, both clinging to him with desperate strength. He wrapped his arms around them, lifting them carefully. They were so light, so fragile, their bodies trembling in his arms. He held them close, his heart heavy with the weight of their fear and hope. The twins buried their faces against his chest, sobbing softly. He whispered again, "You're safe. Now, I'll get you out." But as he turned back toward the cave entrance, the ground shook. From the shadows beyond, more growls echoed, deeper and louder than before. The valley was not finished with him yet. The rescue had begun, but the escape would be far harder. The twins clung tightly to the human's chest, their small hands gripping his torn armor. Their sobs were muffled, their little bodies trembling, but their eyes glowed with fragile hope. The human held them close, one arm supporting their weight, the other gripping his blood-stained blade. His body ached, every wound burning, but he would not let them go, not while he still breathed. The cave shook as growls echoed from the passage behind him. Shadows moved, claws scraped stone, yellow. Eyes flickered in the darkness. The valley had awakened its fury, and now the swarm was coming. Not 10, not 50, but hundreds. 300 monsters filled the cliffs and the ground outside, waiting, surrounding, hunting. The human stepped out of the cave entrance. The twins pressed against his chest. The air was heavy, thick with the stench of blood and death. Above him, the cliffs swarmed with crawling shapes. Ahead of him, the ground split as beasts charged forward. Their roars thundered, shaking the earth beneath his feet. The human knew there was no easy way out. He could not run, not while carrying the children. He could not hide, not in this cursed valley. The only way was forward, through the swarm, through the impossible. He whispered to himself, his voice steady despite the storm. "Then I will fight them all." The twins looked up at him, their eyes wide, their tears shining. They could feel his heart pounding beneath his chest. "Strong and steady," the girl whispered, her small voice breaking. Don't leave us." The human tightened his arms around them, his eyes sharp as steel. "I won't," he said. "I'll carry you through." The first wave crashed toward him, dozens of beasts roaring together. The human braced his legs, his blade flashing in the dim light. With one arm he swung, slicing the first beast across its throat. Black blood sprayed, the monster collapsing at his feet. Another leaped, claws reaching for the twins. The human turned his body, his blade stabbing upward, cutting it down before it could touch them. Pain tore through his side as another claw grazed him. He gritted his teeth, ignoring it, pushing forward. Step by step, the twins cried, burying their faces in his chest. But the human only whispered, "Hold on. Don't let go." The swarm grew thicker, claws tearing, teeth snapping. The human fought like a storm, his blade striking, his boots crushing. Every step forward was a battle, every breath a victory. His arms burned, his chest ached, but he never loosened his grip on the children. He was their shield, their wall, their only hope, outside the valley. The alien mother stood trembling at the edge. She could hear the endless roars, see dust rising into the sky. Her hands clutched her chest, her tears falling like rain. She prayed with all her heart, begging the universe to spare them. And though she could not see, she believed the human was still fighting. Inside, the ground became slick with blood. The human stumbled once, his knee hitting the dirt. But he forced himself up. A monster lunged at his side, its claws flashing. He turned, his blade slashing its head clean off. He staggered but did not fall. The twins clung tighter, their voices weak, but trembling with trust. "You're strong," the boy whispered. "You won't let them win." The human's lips curved into the faintest of smiles, despite the blood running down his face. "Not today," he said. The monsters roared louder, sensing weakness, sensing blood. They rushed as one, a sea of claws and teeth. The human roared back, his voice shaking the valley itself. He fought with every ounce of strength left, his body moving beyond pain. His blade was no longer just steel, it was his will, his promise, his defiance, one after another. The monsters fell, their blood soaking the stones. The human's body grew heavier, his vision blurred, but his steps never stopped. He pushed through the swarm, carrying the twins closer and closer to the light of the valley's edge. Behind him lay a path of broken bodies, proof of his stand. Before him still lay dozens more, but he no longer feared them. His spirit was unbreakable. The final wall of beasts rose before him, a wall of 3, each towering like giants. Their roars shook the ground, their claws sharp as blades. The human lifted his sword with trembling arms, his chest heaving. He whispered into the children's ears, "Close your eyes." Then he charged. The clash was thunder. The air split with roars and screams. Blood splashed across his face. His body shuddered under the impact, but his blade cut deep. His boots crushed bones. He moved like a man possessed, his rage and love stronger than fear. One beast fell, then another, their deaths shaking. The cliffs, the third slammed him back, claws cutting across his shoulder, but with a roar that tore from the deepest part of his soul. The human drove his blade into its chest. The beast fell silent, collapsing at his feet. The valley grew still again, the roars fading. The human stood swaying, his body drenched in blood, his breath ragged, but in his arms, the twins were safe. Their small faces pressed against him, their tears mixing with relief. He had faced the swarm, 300 monsters, and he still stood, barely, but he stood, step by step, broken but unyielding. The human carried the children toward the light of the valley's edge, toward their mother, toward hope, toward the end of the nightmare. The light of the valley's edge glowed faintly ahead. The human staggered forward, each step heavy as stone. His body was broken, his armor torn, his blade cracked. Blood ran down his arms and legs. His chest rose and fell with painful gasps. Yet still he held the twins close, refusing to loosen his grip. Behind him lay a path of silence, a graveyard of monsters. 300 beasts had roared, clawed, and bitten, but now they lay still. The silent valley was silent again, but this time for another reason. It was silent because one man had defied its curse. One human had walked in where no one dared and returned alive. The twins whimpered softly in his arms, their tears wetting his chest, their small fingers tangled in his torn clothing. But their cries were no longer of fear. They were cries of relief, for they knew they were safe. They knew this man, this stranger, had carried them out of the darkness. At the valley's edge, the alien mother waited, her knees pressed into the dirt, her hands raw from clinging to the ground. Her eyes had not closed once, her voice hoarse from endless prayers. When she saw a figure stumbling through the mist, her heart stopped. She rose to her feet, trembling, her breath breaking into sobs. At first she feared it was a trick of the shadows, that her mind, broken by grief, imagined a shape of hope. But then she saw the truth, the broad shoulders, the broken armor, the blood-soaked body, and in his arms, the two small forms she had longed to see, her twins, alive, clinging to him with all their strength. The mother screamed their names, her voice shattering with joy and pain. She ran forward, falling to her knees before them. Her hands touched their faces, their hair, their trembling shoulders. She wept as they cried out, "Mother, Mother," their voices weak but alive. She pulled them into her arms, her body shaking as she held them. Her tears fell on their faces, mixing with their own. Her heart, broken for so long, was whole again. The human stepped back, his body swaying. He watched the reunion in silence, his eyes heavy, his breath shallow, his chest burned with every inhale. His vision blurred, but in his heart, there was peace. He had kept his promise. He had brought them back. The mother looked up at him, her eyes wide with tears and awe. She rose slowly, her twins still clinging to her. She stepped forward, her body trembling, not with fear now, but with reverence. She knelt before him, lowering her head to the ground. Her voice broke as she said, "You saved them. You saved us all." The human shook his head weakly, his voice rough. "I only did what had to be done." But the mother lifted her gaze, her tears shining like stars. "No," she whispered. "You did what no one else could." The villagers, drawn by the noise, began to gather. At first they came with caution, fearing what they might see. But when their eyes fell upon the human, covered in blood, but still standing, and when they saw the children alive, the mother weeping in joy, a hush fell over them. No one spoke, no one mocked. Instead, they bowed their heads, shame heavy on their faces. For they had abandoned her, abandoned the children, but the stranger had not. The mother rose fully, her twins still clinging to her legs. She stepped close to the human, her eyes never leaving his face. "You are no stranger to me now," she said softly. "You are our protector, our savior, our family." She pressed her forehead to his chest, her tears wetting his blood-stained armor. "This is the only reward I can give you," she whispered. "My life, my loyalty, my people's respect, all belong to you now." The human stood in silence, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. He did not come for reward. He did not fight for honor. He fought because two children needed saving. Yet her gift, her vow, was greater than any treasure. It was eternal, a bond that would never break. The twins looked up at him, their eyes wide and shining. "Will you stay with us?" the boy asked, his voice small. The human knelt slowly, his body aching, his hands gentle as he touched their faces. "I cannot stay," he whispered, "but I will never forget you." The girl hugged him tightly, her tears soaking into his shoulder. "Then we will never forget you either," she said. The mother bowed once more, her voice steady now. "Wherever you go, you will never walk alone," she said. "The story of what you did here will live forever." The human rose, his blade heavy at his side, his body broken but his spirit burning. He turned toward the horizon, his figure tall against the rising sun, and as he walked away, the mother and her children watched, their hearts full of gratitude, their voices whispering his name. One human against 300 monsters, and he had won. The valley behind him lay silent, but the legend he left would never be silent again.